Hello everyone and welcome back. We are on part 2 of the create and maintain a SAM plan process. We got as far as talking about defining and refining a statement of applicability, which is the boundary or scope to which we apply our management system. And then to qualify how we go about actually seeing where we stand with regards to what is good, bad or indifferent in our organisation at the moment, we wave the flag for our tried and trusted maturity assessment, our process maturity assessment. So it's all very well saying, oh, we've got a tool. Yeah, the tool's the solution. But we want to find out, what about the existing processes that sit around the tool? Are we just making an automatic assumption that importing inventory and importing entitlement is going to give us those ELP works of art that we believe we need 24/7? Not the case, not the case at all. We have many life cycles that we need to plug into, and we need to find out where we stand, because if we are operating towards that light on the hill, we have to know where to put our efforts in regard to getting up that hill.
And I think it comes back to what you were saying, a couple of processes ago about if you're not making change, if you're not driving change, then you're not going to be successful. Because what we need to do is recognise that we are where we are at the moment. Very few organisations are implementing completely greenfield. There is always something that exists. If you and if you don't believe me, think about the fact that people in your organisation already use software. They have a way of requesting software. They have a way of getting it deployed. So there is existing SAM processes or hand processes, because people have equipment. So there's existing hand processes. So it's never greenfield. Trust me, it's not greenfield. And so that means that you need to understand where you are now. Because unless you understand where you are now, you're not going to be clear about what has to change. So it's really understanding that process maturity assessment is really about understanding your current state, so that you can then go on and do a gap analysis that tells you the gaps between where you are now and where you want to be, what that vision looks like, so that you can be really clear about what elements need to be changed. That's fundamentally why you do a maturity assessment. And of course, there are other ways of doing it. You can do an automated maturity assessment like the SAM Charter maturity assessment, or again, you can go and do a current state assessment by interviewing people. What problems do you have with SAM? What are the challenges you're facing? So there's many ways of actually performing that current state assessment, but then you need to take that step back and sit down and think, right, okay, so this is where we are and this is where we need to be. So what are the key elements that we need to change, and how are we going to make those changes? And you'll notice that actually that's also what your strategy is doing. Your strategy is saying, right, these are the things that need to change over a next period of time. So don't look at these activities as necessarily being linear either. They're constantly evolving and feeding into each other. And I would recommend, for instance, performing a maturity assessment maybe once a year over a period of years, so that you can measure the changes that are happening, for instance. And you can refine that gap analysis and say, right, well, I can see that we've been succeeding in this area, but we're really not making much progress over here. So then you can build a business case to apply more resources to change in that area, for instance.
I just want to take a quick sidebar too out of the management plan process aspect and mention the maturity assessment. It is close to my heart for obvious reasons. However, one area where a lot of organisations fall down is through mergers and acquisitions as well. So if you're in a position to, subversively or quietly, under the radar, that's the expression I was really after, to conduct a maturity assessment of an organisation you are buying, what it's going to give you is supreme intelligence once they come into the fold, to be able to say, we can jigsaw here, here and here, we can offer support in this particular area. Oh, they're much further along in another area. We need to borrow from them with regards to processes. Because you want that as seamless as possible. You want to have that jigsaw as tightly as possible, not just from a technology perspective. That needs to happen too. Contracts need to be novated and merged, etc. You need to make an informed decision around which technologies you're bringing on board, which you're going to let go fallow. And then at that point, it just makes that cohesion and ease of integration higher up the scale. Don't be that organisation that assumes that the merger and acquisition is settled at the point of the signing of the cheque.
Yep. So once we've got our gap analysis, the next thing we need to think about is our people. What skills and competencies do we have now, and what skills and competencies do we need in order to define our plan and make it successful? So we've got a call out to the SAM competence and training process, which is where we're thinking about the capabilities we need to be able to build and what role employees and contractors need to play. So the next thing is to define our plan, our SAM plan. And this is where it's an operational plan. So it's the detail of what needs to happen over the next few years in order to achieve our goals.
And whereas on the corporate governance process where we talked about, crafting a policy, again, know your audience. You're going to be dealing with people who are, shall we say, not at the top level of the organisation. They're going to be closer to the tech. So you're not limited necessarily by a word count or a page count. You've kind of got artistic license to generate War and Peace if you really wanted to. But you can get a lot denser with the information and write a document that explains more about the how rather than the why.
Yeah. And in terms of structuring it, I would always come back to this concept of people, processes, tools and partners. So explain explain what needs to happen, what your goal is at a high level, what processes you need to operate in order to achieve those goals, but then actually start saying, right, from a people perspective, we need a team. This team needs to have these capabilities. They need to have these skills. They need to be able to play these roles. Then think about the tools. What tools do we need? How do they support us? What is the mix between people and tools? What is it that we'd like to outsource? How do we want to get external help? What are the benefits of external help? What are maybe some of the pitfalls that we need to think about? And really structure it in that way so that that's a very traditional IT operating model, is people, process, tools and partners. So by structuring it that way, you cover pretty much all of the bases, but it will also be familiar with your audience, I should say. So the other two elements that I occasionally bring in, if it's appropriate, is data management. So I might have a conversation in there about the role of the configuration management system and configuration manager, because that's something that is often missing in a lot of organizations. So, explaining the importance of data management and where we need to pull in the data in order to achieve our outcomes can be quite a powerful element of your operating plan, your SAM plan, or your ITAM plan, I should say. And then the other element is the governance. So explaining, so that we're sort of explaining the vision and the strategy so that people have that clear picture of what that governance looks like and how and what your organisation model might look like as well. Who reports to whom? Where does your sponsorship lie? How do you work with other important stakeholders like IT service management or procurement or information security? So that organisational model and explaining how everybody needs to work together to govern and achieve the outcomes can also be quite powerful as well. So people, process, tools and partners, plus optionally data and governance are the ways that I would structure this document.
Yeah, I think the only sort of PS I put on that as well might be what the map actually looks like for improved maturity over time, because it's all, you could cross-reference back to the policy document. People may not be so bothered about that, but if you can start to put pounds, shillings and pence and metrics against what good looks like for the life of that document in the operations plan, then it gives them something to sink their teeth into with regards to work and to apply themselves accordingly then.
Yeah. So I think from an operating model perspective, Martin Thompson did a YouTube video about defining an ITAM operating model. So that might be interesting to look at as well. But he was doing it on a page. So that was just a single page of what your operating model looks like. Your SAM plan can be a much more detailed document. And of course, there are people in this world who will read a very detailed document like that. you believe it or not, people will tell you that they don't, but actually, particularly, maybe not so much when people don't travel as much, but what I used to find is I'd write a very detailed operating plan, give it to the CIO, and they would travel somewhere and they'd read it on the aeroplane. So it would actually get read. But of course, once you've got the document, you can then split it up and give provide the key aspects of it out to different people. But having that document there that's quite detailed is very useful for you as well, so that you're very clear about what it is that you need to do.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're the nexus for all this potentially. You're where all of this comes together, or the human representation of that.
Yeah. So what I would say is, again, something on approvals. So it's very powerful to get the approval of your senior stakeholder for this stuff, because once it's been approved, when people don't play ball, and they may sort of say, oh no, but you can't do it that way, because if you can then say, look, actually, it's in my operating plan, in my ITAM plan, that this is what we're going to do, and that was approved. The senior leadership team approved that. That becomes a really powerful argument to drive change. So it can be very hard to get that formal approval, but it is worth working towards. In those scenarios where you don't have that formal approval, you can potentially just say, use the tactic of getting tacit approval, which is that you've shown somebody something and they've not argued against it. It's not as powerful as formal approval, but it can still be very powerful. And again, just having a document that you've circulated around to the senior leadership team can actually be really, that could be sufficient tacit approval. Again, when somebody's not towing the line, you can say, well, look, it's in this document. This document was circulated to the leadership team. And of course, then the honorary boss, sorry, I shouldn't swear. The honorary so-and-so will say, well, I was never told that it was approved. But you've still got that sense of authority coming out because nobody has been arguing against it. And in fact, that would then give you a case to go back to the leadership team and say, right, this person wants to do something that's against this document. Do we need to change this document? Do we need to change our plan? Or do we need this person to actually do what we need them to do? So again, it can, even if it's not had formal approval, it can still trigger, the tacit approval can still be pretty powerful. And also, even if it doesn't work effectively because somebody said, well, I never approved it, it can still trigger those conversations that can still be very useful as well. So where does this process lead out to? Lots and lots of different processes.
Too many, in my humble opinion, but that's a big fight for me and Kylie another day.
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of them are what I call semi-governance processes. Yeah. They're the processes which then actually start implementing your plan. So things like vendor onboarding process. How do we introduce new vendors into our management system? Our risk management process, resource management or competence and training process, supplier management, awareness and communications. These are all stuff that has to be done, and they should be being outlined in our plan. They're all elements of our plan, and these are the processes that actually take the next step in implementing them. Yes. That's why there's so many.
There are. Unfortunately, it does starburst. Unfortunately, certainly from version 2 of the kit as well, I think. But yeah, there's wisdom in all of them. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
And then, of course, you might find that elements of your plan need to drive your vision, need to change or influence your vision and strategy. Some things may not be possible when you get down to the detailed planning level. So you then need to potentially circle back around to your corporate governance process and have the conversations with your senior sponsor about, maybe
revising the strategy.
Revise our strategy.
And have that, and perhaps we might do a separate video on this, but actually explaining, or if we haven't done it already, is maybe actually aligning the kit to the management system standards. So we talk about corporate governance, create, maintain a SAM plan, the processes, the QA process, and having that PDCA cycle. Because it could be, as well as sort of feeding back to the policy or the corporate governance process, that once we get the processes implemented, they're not kicking out the KPIs that we expect them to support the plan, to support the policy. So having that causal link between operations and strategy is really where the management system standard goes. It's a case of don't tell me, show me. you know, show me the request process is working, show me the inventory importation process is working. And if you can put statistical data against that to demonstrate it, then it's very easy to move on and concern yourself with the next task at hand.
Yeah. So I think that's it really. So it's all about the ITAM plan and your operating system. It's the core of ISO 19770. So
Cool.
yeah, look forward to seeing more and more of you get certified.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right, take care.
See you later.